Welcome to Her Discovered Power, the podcast where we try to provide every single good-hearted woman tools and knowledge that can empower and free you from so many of the emotional aspects that impact you most, from our earliest teachings and societal implications. I'm Dave Jones with Captive Coaching and Empowerment, and this is my mission and my passion because of what I've seen happen with the women in my life, including my own mother. We're here to help you be the she that you were meant to be. Hope you follow us, hope you share us, and hope you enjoy the episode.
Well, good morning, David, and welcome back, everyone, to Her Discovered Power. Today is an episode that I think many women will relate to because it touches on a silent reason that they're exhausted, resentful, or maybe emotionally drained. And we're talking about the emotional cost of being too understanding. As women, we often pride ourselves on being empathetic. We try to see the best in people. We try to understand where they're coming from or give second chances. But sometimes we become so focused on understanding everyone else that we stop protecting ourselves. We start to understand their behavior, understand the circumstances or the excuses. And before we know it, we're carrying the weight of relationships that are hurting us. So today we're going to talk about why that happens and how to recognize when empathy has crossed the line into self-abandonment.
You know, Sherry, we're also going to break down in depth why it happens, where it comes from, and how to stop confusing empathy with responsibility or sympathy.
Oh, I always like to know the why, so I appreciate that. So let's start with the truth. The good-hearted women don't become too understanding by accident, right? I mean, it's trained in us.
It is. Absolutely, it is. It's trained, it's conditioned, and those are a little different, but basically it's the same thing that the children learn in their childhood, how to create these emotional patterns. And good-hearted people almost always learn early in their childhood over empathizing. And it's a survival strategy that most good-hearted people do. And because it's not just about women, but yet again, like so many subjects that we cover, Sherry, good-hearted women tend to do it more, and they tend to experience so much more pain from it for themselves and inside their relationships. It's something that's trained, like I mentioned, and conditioned in people because in childhood, our main focus is to stay safe, stay connected, and attempt to avoid conflict. But the most important thing that every single child does is develop a behavior and a pattern in an attempt so that they don't get rejected. Because trying to be acceptable as possible is the way every child tends to feel safe.
Well, and as women, we were expected to be too understanding. So that's what they had to do to be safe. So basically what you're saying, if we grew up in a home where we had to read people's emotions or moods and kind of anticipate their reactions, then you're saying we learn to understand people too well?
You know, it's not exactly that we learn it too well. It's more a case of learning to do it well.
Mm.
And because of that, we learn how to stay as safe as possible. And that becomes our default setting in adulthood. Now, Sherry, the concept of being too understanding is really difficult for a lot of people to understand. And often with my clients, we have to break it down in multiple different ways because it's so difficult to relate to, because most people who are quote unquote too understanding don't realize that there's damage that they're providing to themselves. And at the same time, it sounds like it's such a positive attribute to have. You see, they often will feel unappreciated in a relationship without really realizing that we're the ones that actually create the scenario that causes the lack or lesser amount of appreciation we seek. And we're going to talk about how we train others to do that. Because for many, if not most good-hearted women, Sherry, we learned as a little girl that there was a benefit and often reward or recognition, which is a reward, for being so sweet, like you were referencing, for being so accommodating, So those emotional patterns come with us into adulthood, and unconsciously, we anticipate the same reaction as we learned we would obtain from our surroundings in childhood, and we try to apply those in adulthood. Sherry, for so many people, let me give you an example of what this looks like, since it's so sometimes difficult to relate to. Let's say there's a woman who's carrying around a little booklet of emotional coupons. The coupons are for everything. One coupon is a free pass for bad behavior. Another one says buy one apology, get one forgiven. Another coupon she hands out and says 50% off for accountability. Another one, unlimited excuses, no expiration date. She's basically running a clearance sale on her boundaries. And at some point, she's got to be able to realize that she's stressed and she needs her own emotional coupon, but nobody gives her that coupon because she's so used to picking up for everybody else. Does that make sense?
I bet you a lot of women are shaking their heads right now because they can recognize that in themselves. When we're talking about being too understanding, I'm thinking we're talking about things like if you're seeing inconsistency, we make excuses, or maybe if your friend's being selfish, you're just understanding about it. How about if somebody mistreats you? Do we focus on the why they did it instead? I feel like we could make really good defense attorneys.
Oh, absolutely. We can understand them so much that we forget to understand ourselves and forget to apply boundaries or consequences. And that's if we even know how to do that. And as a result, we diminish our worth unconsciously because it's as if we're saying to ourselves, I don't deserve better, and therefore I won't expect better, and I won't require better. And it's done unconsciously. Because remember, this is all those kind of traits that we learn as good-hearted people that we're supposed to accept in others. And the more we allow reasonable expectations and boundaries to be ignored, the more we unwittingly teach others that we don't deserve them. And we teach them how then to continue to treat us. And it really becomes a negative driving cycle. Because while this topic is common among women, and many of my clients have had to grow through this, by the way, it's a big topic online also, Sherry. A lot of women are talking about, what do I do about being too understanding? Is it causing me difficulty? But the issue really isn't that we understand too much. It's that we understand at all. We give way too much credit for what the minimum requirements should be or need to be that might be unmet.
I think this is where a lot of women get stuck. I mean, we're hearing these messages our entire lives to be kind, forgiving, and somewhere along the way, I think we start believing that if we understand somebody's behavior, we're supposed to tolerate it. And we'll say things like, well, they've been through a lot, or maybe they didn't mean it that way, or they're doing the best they can. And maybe before long, we're carrying that responsibility that was never meant to be ours. Is that why you're saying it diminishes our worth?
Exactly. Let me give you an example. Not too long ago, I graduated a client that came to me because she was in a toxic relationship, emotionally and physically abusive. She loved this man because she understood that his background was from an abusive relationship with his parents. And she continued to feel, well, it's not his fault. I understand why he came this way, and he's not always abusive. But the issue was she really still, even though we understood totally how he became abusive, having being raised in that type of environment, it doesn't mean that she needed to accept it upon herself just because she was empathetic and could really appreciate the gravity of the childhood he experienced. Here's the thing, ladies. Many of my clients, and I guarantee some of you listening, if I understand why he did it, then I shouldn't be hurt by it. Or I understand she doesn't realize how this would hurt my feelings, so I don't need to mention it or do anything about it. Or, and this is a big one, Sherry, in the workplace, I understand I threatened him as a woman, so I'm going to tread lightly.
Hmm. That one, so many things you just said hit home for me. Number one, I'm one of those that wants to understand why people do things. And I really feel like understanding someone and excusing someone are not the same thing. But I think for a long time, I thought they went together. And then what you're saying about women minimizing themselves, I feel like if we have to do that, then those people aren't worthy of us. But it took me a long time to learn that.
It did. And I remember so many of the aha moments in our coaching together, Sherry, that really brought you through that and to the realization. Because here is another big thing that is a myth buster, if you will. Kind of as good-hearted people have learned that acceptance and approval are kind of the same thing.
Mm.
Now, if we had to write down a definition, chances are people would write down different definitions. But emotionally, Sherry, so many good-hearted people feel that if I accept who he or she is, then that means I approve of them.
Mm.
If I accept them and their behavior, that means I approve of their behavior, but it doesn't. Acceptance of another person means we understand who they are, where they came from, and we can accept who they are as a result. But that does not mean we approve of that in our life. Make sense?
Mm-hmm.
I once had a client who was really tall for a woman. She was a little taller than I was, and she knew that it made many men she worked with, both superiors as well as her staff, feel uncomfortable, feel intimidated. That's what she felt. So she would wear flats to work. And she didn't even realize when we started coming together as coach and client, this wasn't even really the issue that brought her to me. She even slouched when she walked. She would slump in a chair so that she wouldn't be taller than people. You know, so much of the stuff that we go through in coaching together reveals a lot of things that my clients don't even realize has been causing them damage or causing them pain.
Yeah, I remember that with our coaching work. And height for men is a very sensitive subject. So she's not wrong. I mean, she was probably making them feel insecure, but that's not about her. How did you help her resolve this?
Well, it's really the same issues we're discussing, because when we're too understanding, it doesn't just mean how we react to somebody, but it actually can impact how we act in the first place. You know, in her circumstance, she couldn't do anything about her height, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what ended up happening was she really was unconsciously trying to make herself feel small and seem small, not wanting to intimidate anybody because of her size. So I told her that she wasn't really minimizing her intimidation. You know, what she really was doing was diminishing her own sense of self and confidence, and was allowing the sentiments of others to control how confidently and she presented herself. And it was really an aha moment for her. And she started wearing the heels that she would wear with her husband, who was also very tall, when they'd go out. She enjoyed how she felt in heels, and she started wearing those to work. And you know what happened inside of 30 days?
What?
Called her in and said that she'd seen my client's confidence soar, and handed her a high-level project that got her a raise and a promotion.
Mm.
And here's right? It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Here's the thing, ladies. Empathy, in my opinion, is one of the most important attributes a good person can have, or any person. It's a large part of why you are good-hearted, and you couldn't be good-hearted if you didn't. But because you understand the plight, circumstances, and emotions of others, does not mean that we have to absorb them. And empathy does not equal obligation. Just because we understand doesn't mean we have to accept. Understanding someone's pain or their limitations does not require you to accept their harm.
Mm. So true. So true. And I bet you so many women are making themselves smaller in many places in their lives without even realizing it. I mean, and I think we can understand somebody's story and still say this behavior is not acceptable for me.
Oh, absolutely. I've got somebody that I've known for years, has a really good heart. It's just not pleasurable to be around the vast majority of time.
Mm.
So the rare occasions that I see him, it's like, let's catch up for 5 minutes and then I'm good. I just don't have that need to accept that negativity. And our ladies don't either.
Hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
empathy is a window. It's a window that allows us to see others, but responsibility is a door. And just because you can see inside them does not mean we have to walk into their emotional existence.
Love it.
You like that?
Mhm.
Let me give you a little example. Imagine somebody hands you an umbrella in a storm. It's pouring out. You try to open the umbrella, it's broken, getting soaked, but you're holding it because you feel bad for the person that gave it to you and it's broken. And you're thinking, well, they tried, they meant well. They didn't have a better umbrella, but it's not working, right?
Oh, and you're drenched and miserable.
Yeah, exactly. Understanding that the umbrella is broken doesn't keep you dry. Understanding that they didn't have a working one doesn't keep you dry. You're still soaked to the bone, and they're standing there under their umbrella that is shedding the rain for them, but it's too small for you to fit under. And so if you can't fit under theirs, you're still going to get soaked. Empathy of another person's emotions and circumstances don't protect us from the consequences of someone giving you a broken umbrella.
Hmm. That really helps me understand it. I mean, so you can understand someone's limitations and still choose not to stand in the rain with them.
Exactly. Ladies, your compassion and empathy is hugely important to who you are, but you must be able to protect yourself from accepting and giving grace to anyone who is not going to share their umbrella with you.
Hmm. Well, David, let's talk about the emotional cost because I think being too understanding, while it sounds like a good thing, you're saying it's actually self-abandonment. So, what does that cost us as women?
Well, that's perfectly put. It's somewhat like somebody who is called a people pleaser. Too understanding, a people pleaser, they both sound kind of noble. They both sound like positive attributes on the surface, right?
Mm-hmm.
But they're equally damaging and diminishing to self. Too understanding shows up like this in a good-hearted woman. We excuse behavior that hurts us, right? We rationalize red flags. We stay longer in a relationship than we need to.
Mm.
We give more than we receive. We tolerate emotional inequality, balance within a relationship, and we minimize our needs. I've had clients who then say, Sherry, but Dave, you're talking about keeping score, and good people shouldn't keep score for them equally, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they're right, Sherry. However, we don't keep score, but we must, for our sake, ladies, take note as to whether we are appreciated, whether we're valued, whether or not we're considered. If none of those are taking place, then we are actually training those in our lives that appreciation, value, and consideration is not required.
Mm.
Right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then eventually there comes a point where you realize you're exhausted and you're carrying the relationship and managing emotions and constantly giving grace while receiving very little in return.
Yeah. And that probably sounds somewhat familiar to you, Sherry.
I mean, it was a big lesson for me. I learned that, suffering is not proof of love or loyalty or even goodness. But I think, honestly, David, the worst part is you start believing that your pain is the price of being a good person. And we think suffering is a sign of loyalty, but from this conversation, it's actually a sign of conditioning.
It really is. And what ends up happening, whether or not we want to consciously acknowledge it or not, but I'm guaranteeing you, ladies, when we accept less than we feel we want, need, or even deserve, at the same time we're training them that they don't need to appreciate or value or consider us, we're also training ourselves to minimize what we feel we are worth or what we deserve, because unconsciously we know we are accepting less than. And the only way our unconscious emotional mind can really comprehend the imbalance there is to minimize our value within ourselves to make us feel, okay, this is now all we deserve. I will give you a weird little example. When I go into a grocery store and there is usually a young man or a young woman that is willing to help, I'll ask for something and they'll help me and I'll say, thank you. And they'll go, no problem. And every single time that happens, Sherry, and if I'm with my wife, it embarrasses the heck out of her. But every single time I will stop them and I will go, please don't ever say that again. You helped me. And by you saying no problem, you're really unconsciously diminishing what you have done in your kindness. Now, granted, it's their job, but you can tell when somebody's glad to have helped you, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I will tell them, you're diminishing yourself by saying no problem. Say you're very welcome, or say that's what I'm here for. Say almost anything else that empowers you and allows them to be thankful for the help that you provided, but don't ever say no problem. Ladies, the reason I'm giving that example is because my good-hearted women clients constantly do that and constantly over apologize in an attempt to be too understanding. Can you relate to that, Sherry?
Yeah, I'm thinking of an example. You're going down a grocery store line and you meet somebody at the corner, and instead of saying excuse me, I used to say I'm sorry when it wasn't my fault. So I've had to change it to excuse me because it's a slow diminishment of my worth by saying I'm sorry when I didn't do anything wrong.
Perfect example. And I know, ladies, that's a small example, but if you get the essence of that, it impacts and affects every layer of how we are looking at our worth. And so this is that part of true understanding. And here's the truth. If your empathy costs you your peace, then it's not empathy, it's self-betrayal.
And the cost is too high. It just is too high.
Yep.
I do think that there's a moment, I noticed that in a lot of women, where they hit a point where they realize that they're tired of being the emotionally responsible one.
Oh, yeah.
And they're done.
Oh, yeah. This is big online. This is big with my clients because once they get to that point, they're kind of fed up and they don't still know what to do about it necessarily. It's that kind of moment where she says, I can't or won't keep carrying the emotional weight for both of us. The thing is, we can start requiring responsibility from others, right?
Yeah. I mean, I would say it's not even out of anger or frustration that women do it. It's just out of clarity.
Clarity and self-preservation, because they realize they just can't do it anymore. That's exactly right.
Mm-hmm.
It's that moment she stops explaining. She stops justifying, stops over empathizing, and starts observing.
Mm-hmm. And I would say ask different questions. They're starting to ask, do they reciprocate? Are they taking responsibility or showing up emotionally? Or maybe even, do they do it the way I need them to do it?
I love how you put that because, ladies, we have the absolute right, and I will absolutely state we have the responsibility to know what our needs are and to require it. And when a woman gets to that point of empowerment to be able to feel that we have that right, when somebody says, no, I can't meet your requirements. She doesn't collapse. She doesn't chase. She doesn't beg. It's notice, it's information, it's data.
Mm, love it. I mean, you're just saying, I understand, but I'm going to choose myself. I'm going to have boundaries. I'll have compassion, but I'm not sacrificing my own peace.
Exactly. I'm sure everybody has heard this analogy, but imagine every single relationship as a bank account. And ladies, when you deposit your understanding, your empathy, your patience, your support emotionally into that joint account, let's call it, but the other person keeps withdrawing and keeps taking your energy that you just put in, your time, your stability, your understanding, they keep withdrawing. Well, the thing is, if you keep depositing into account and they keep pulling out, you're going to go emotionally bankrupt.
Mm, yeah, you need that reserve.
It really is a circumstance of needing to understand what healthy selfish is.
Mm-hmm.
Sherry, what you and I talked about at the beginning of this episode is how so many good-hearted young women and girls in those formative years are taught that there have to be, or they conditioned to have to be sweet, understanding. But the reality is, good-hearted people grow up believing and really being taught that being selfless is a good thing. It is another huge wake-up call, aha moment, and a burst of empowerment when I share with my clients that selfless is benefiting others at the detriment to self. And that is absolutely contrary to what the vast majority of good-hearted people believe, that they were taught, and believe in their adult life, because what we've done is we've learned that we need to be more and more good. But the reality is, there's only two things that drive everything in our lives, Sherry, and you know that it is the avoidance of pain and the seeking of pleasure.
Mm-hmm.
A healthy selfish is, ladies, that we must benefit ourselves by the benefiting of others, or at least after considering the impact upon others. That's healthy selfish. In a recent episode, Sherry, you mentioned about going to the gym, how you become a better mother, you become a better partner, you become a better leader at work because you've had that time to recharge.
Mm-hmm.
That's healthy selfish. Selfless is denying anything that keeps you from being able to have the energy to fulfill your life and those in your life, and depletes you while you're constantly trying to provide for others.
Yeah. Yeah. But you're saying we do a lot of this unconsciously. So how would we break this pattern?
Well, the first thing we have to do, and this is something that a lot of ladies really have a difficult time with, because the vast majority of good-hearted people think that this is a baseline. They'll almost say metaphorically or parenthetically, I should say, isn't that the way everybody is? And the answer is no, ladies. Here's the thing, Sherry, we've got to acknowledge your goodness. Ladies, you're not over understanding because you're weak. You're doing it because you're good-hearted, as you know. But you have to embrace and accept the following. If you're kind, compassionate, and considerate of others, and that doesn't mean that you automatically defer to the needs of others. It merely means that you consider the needs of others and you consider how you impact others. Then that means you are good-hearted.
Mm-hmm.
The deeds you do is because you're good-hearted. And if one of those deeds is trying to over-understand, over-empathize, or quote-unquote be too understanding, that's going to the other end of that kind of bell curve where we're going to self-damage rather than self-empowerment. That makes sense, Sherry?
Yeah, that was a big lesson for me. I mean, not everybody thinks like me, and I can't project my goodness onto them. And also accepting that I was a good-hearted person, once I had those two things down.
Yeah.
It helped a lot.
Yeah. Second thing, we got to separate empathy from responsibility. This is huge. Good-hearted people really tend to accept empathy as, how would I want someone to treat me? But the issue is this, ladies. When we consider how we'd like to be treated, we unwittingly make the presumption that they are us, and therefore we unconsciously expect their reaction, their appreciation, or willingness to support us when needing to be returned because we would. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's what I just said. I can't project my goodness onto them. So, I mean, we can understand someone without carrying them emotionally because you say there's a difference between sympathy and empathy.
Big difference. And for all of our listeners, just as a reminder, sympathy is feeling sorry for the plight of someone else, having compassion for them. And empathy is putting ourselves as metaphorically possible in their shoes, in their life, so to speak, and experiencing the emotions of their plight as though it actually was happening to us. And this is so important to be able to do so that we can have a fulfilling existence and be able to have the understanding of others. But it costs us when we expect a different behavior than they are already training us to know that they would have. And it costs us when we are presuming that they are going to be just like us. Normal kind of emotions, if that makes sense, but it's so damaging. You have to stop. I can't remember how you said it, Sherry, but basically stop translating their behavior. If somebody shows us who they are, believe it. Don't reinterpret it. Don't massage it so that it sounds better and sounds good. And we can't empower what's not really acceptable. You quote Maya Angelou all the time with that quote, don't you?
Mm-hmm. When someone shows you who they are, believe it.
Exactly.
The first time.
The first time, exactly.
Yeah.
And then we have to match energy. We don't compensate for it. No, they can't provide this, so I'm going to supplement it.
Like if they're giving 20%, you shouldn't be giving 120.
Exactly. Or even the other 80, to get to that 100%. That's exactly right.
Good point.
It's not about keeping score. It is about effectively fair play. It's about appreciation. It's about consideration, but it's all about value itself. And then lastly, we have to let people experience the consequences of their own choices. You're not their emotional parent, ladies. You can only carry your own level of emotionality. Sympathy and empathy, compassion and consideration are all the attributes that make you good-hearted women. We carry somebody else's without having any help from them to either help carry it or help grow, then we're just weighing ourselves down.
And I can tell you from experience, I mean, when you stop being too understanding, something wonderful happens and your world opens up. It's just the most amazing thing.
You kind of become emotionally neutral, don't you? You're not cold, you're not guarded, you're just kind of clear, almost like you're in this separation of, okay, this is your room of pain. I'm going to leave that door closed. When you walk out and seek help that I think I might be able to provide, that's fine, but I'm not walking through the door into your pain to try to carry it for you. Does that make sense?
It does. And I think you stop taking things so personally and you don't get hurt by people who can't match your good heart.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I think you do start to understand too that your empathy is a gift. It's not a burden. And it was a big one for me that I get to choose. Not everyone has a right to have access to my goodness.
Love that. Love that. Ladies, you are an absolute gift to this world. You really are. You are the model for so much of humanity. But if you allow others to deplete your energy, you're depleting those other people in your good-hearted world for the fit of having you in it. You deserve your full And that's why we're always here, Sherry, right? To give.
Love it. I love it. And if you're listening today and this sounds familiar, I want you to know you're not alone, that many of us were taught, that being a good woman meant being endlessly understanding and accommodating. But honestly, healthy relationships require mutual effort and respect and responsibility. And your empathy is a gift. So just make sure you're giving yourself that empathy too, because your goodness it should never cost you yourself.
Love that.
Mm-hmm.
Empathy without boundaries becomes self-harm. And empathy with boundaries becomes power. Your empathy in your heart is absolutely beautiful, ladies. It's part of such a large part of what makes you so wonderful for this world. You deserve more.
Yeah. Yeah, because you matter, your feelings matter, your peace, you matter just as much as everyone else. And you deserve to be understood as well.
Love it. Love it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sherry, as always, thank you for doing this with me. I wouldn't want to do it with anyone else. Catch us on the next episode. Share us, follow us, post us on all your social media so that every good-hearted woman that you don't even know might need to hear what we have to say this week will be able to hear it. And maybe she will be able to be the she that she was always meant to be.
Thank you, David. Good episode as always.
For Her Discovered Power, we'll see you all next week.